Hi, good afternoon. My name is Maria Lopez, and I chose to cover how Botox diminishes the ability to read faces for my signature assignment. All right. So, to begin, why am I interested in the topic? So, researching how Botox affects the ability to read faces is particularly relevant today because facial expressions play a big role in communication and emotional connection. With Botox becoming more prominent in today's age, especially in cosmetic treatments, understanding its impact on social interactions, empathy, and emotional perception is extremely important. So, what even is Botox? Botox is one of the members of a class of neurotoxic medications that blocks muscle activation. Injecting Botox into facial muscles underneath wrinkles causes relaxation of those muscles, resulting in the smoothing of the overlying skin. So even though this treatment can make your skin appear younger, it can also affect the ability to express emotions, the ability to experience emotions, and the ability to effectively communicate with others. So how does this topic relate to how people interact in the real world? So not only does it affect the way people perceive one's emotions, but it can also impact the emotional experience of the people who actually have the injections. In one study that I read over, participants either received Botox injections or wrinkle filler, which does not paralyze the muscles, and then they were instructed to watch emotional video clips. The participants who received the Botox injections had a lower self-reported emotional response to the video clips. So this finding would support that something called the facial feedback hypothesis, which suggests that our facial expressions can affect our emotional experience. Another study showed that injection of the 11s area led to the decreased activation of key brain emotional centers, like for example the amygdala, on a functional MRI when subjects were passively viewing pictures of anger. The 11s area is what's kind of shown in those pictures. It'd be like those kind of frown lines on your forehead. So this supports the concept that the facial musculature not only expresses, but it also regulates the mood state, and it can also explain some of the reason that there has been so much success with the use of Botox for treatments for depression. Some other studies showed how Botox impact on emotional feedback. Injections to examine amygdala activation during the imitation of fear and anger. Botox injected groups showed no difference in activity when imitating fear. However, they displayed decreased activity when imitating anger, suggesting that the ability to express emotion influences emotional intensity. And then in another study, they researched self-reported emotional responses to visual emotional stimuli. So Botox users reported a statistically significant decrease in their emotional experience when exposed to moderate emotional stimuli. Another study also found that Botox paralyzing facial muscles showed participants' ability to read passages depicting emotions tied to those muscles. And another one discovered that Botox users had a reduced ability to match facial expressions with emotions. So the correlation between brain activity and self-reported emotional experiences supports the conclusion that cosmetic Botox injections impair emotional experience. So lastly, consideration should be given to the phenomenon of embodiment. The embodiment theory states that the processing of emotional information, such as facial expressions, includes reproducing the same emotion on one's own face. Like, for example, when you see someone smile, you kind of instinctively mimic it to understand the expression. If either person in a conversation has a limited ability to make those types of expressions, nonverbal communication can be affected, making it harder to interpret the other person's emotions and your own. So what does this topic have? What effect does this topic have on cognition and my field of interest? So I am interested in education and seeing how Botox can affect the brain activity by limiting facial movements. It makes it harder to recognize emotions. This may impact empathy and emotional understanding, which is extremely important for teachers who rely on facial cues to see how their students are engaging and if they're well. Facial expressions are also key to building trust and connection in the classroom. If things like Botox make it harder to read emotions, teachers could struggle to recognize when students need support or just reading their emotional responses in general, um, which could in turn make it just harder for teachers to connect with their students and their classmates. So studying this topic helps to see how facial expressions impact learning and how teachers can adjust their communication. It also adds to conversations about emotional intelligence, social learning, and changes in human interaction in education. Why is it important for others to know this information? So I think it's actually really important because it affects just the way that we communicate in everyday life. Sorry, when people struggle to interpret emotions due to limited facial mimicry, it can impact social interactions, empathy, and emotional connections. This research is especially relevant in today's education, healthcare, and everyday relationships. Like mentioned before, teachers rely on facial cues to gauge student engagement, and then doctors and therapists use them to assess emotional well-being. If Botox reduces emotional recognition, it could make it harder for interpersonal communication to happen. So drawing a conclusion. So all in all, this research on Botox and facial mimicry highlights the important truth that our ability to express and read emotions is deeply connected to our social interactions, cognition, and even brain activity. As these injections become more widespread, understanding the effects that they can have on emotional recognition is incredibly important, especially in fields like education, healthcare, and interpersonal relationships. When these facial expressions are dampened, it's our ability to fully connect with others, affecting empathy, communication, emotional processing. This research raises important questions about how modern cosmetic procedures shape human interaction because they're only increasing. While Botox may enhance aesthetic appearance, it's essential to consider its subtle yet significant effects on emotional perception and social engagement. As our society continues to embrace these cosmetic enhancements, staying informed about their broader impact allows for more mindful choices and deeper conversations about the future of human connection. Um, and yeah, these are my references. Thank you so much for staying and listening. Have a great summer.